Welcome to Babblecom 5. This is episode 17 of season 2 of Babylon 5, Knives. Baseball on the station. Interesting use of limited space. Sheridan's taking out his frustrations on the ball following a long session with the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, who are concerned about trade jump gates getting impacted by the Narn Centauri conflict. Garibaldi, meanwhile, has been in Grey Sector in what's known as the Triangle, where strange things are known to happen. This piques Sheridan's interest, and he resolves to go and have a nose round there himself. What could possibly go wrong, eh? Elsewhere, Londo and Veer are discussing Centauri opera very earnestly, including sing-alongs, ending with the cloaked figure throat-locking Londo from behind. It actually turns out to be Urza, an old friend of Londo's, luckily for him. Following introductions and an invitation to drink Bravari, he excuses himself after his long journey, but promises to join Londo later. Sheridan's going Moulder on us, complete with sort of halogen torch. He finds a wounded alien in the dimly lit confines of Grey 10 and links into Garibaldi. Suddenly, the seemingly dead alien clutches Sheridan's head, and some form of energy hits Sheridan's head. Then the corpse returns to stillness. A shocked Sheridan manages to get Garibaldi back and calls him in. Franklin notes that there's nothing unusual about Sheridan's physiology, and that gas build-ups in dead bodies can cause seemingly lifelike movements. Sheridan wants to search the alien's quarters, and is discussing this with Garibaldi when his vision becomes distorted. He dismisses it as fatigue, but agrees to leave the search to Garibaldi. Londo retrieves his drink from its resting place as Veer asks him about Urza. They have known each other since childhood, and their houses have traditionally been allied, but as we learned before, both are skilled with the sword. Londo's fighting name in dueling society was Pasoliate. Urza used this when he accosted him. Interestingly, Londo remembers his early years back then with great fondness, as a time when the Centauri ruled the spaceways, whilst Veer doesn't see the need to dwell on the past. Londo accuses him of having a negative mindset. Just as Urza, or Skatori, joins them and festivities begin. In his quarters, Sheridan is resting, but a noise disturbs him and he brings the lights up. He growls to see a CGI pterodactyl-like creature hovering over his bed, and it lunges for him. He manages to retrieve his PPG and opens up on it, but seemingly his shots do no damage and just hit the wall behind it. It vanishes without a trace, just as Garibaldi comes in, having been on his way with the forensics report on the dead alien. Sheridan thinks it was a Greylor, a beast that had stalked him on an alien planet in the past, but of course there's no sign of it. It turns out that the dead alien committed suicide where Sheridan found it. Elsewhere, Londo name-checks Adira from Season 1's Born to the Purple as a lost love. Then matters turn to affairs of state, where it becomes clear that Urza is opposed to the faction that Londo helped to get Emperor Katajian put on the throne. Violently opposed, in fact, to the extent that he seems to know the current conflict with the Narn was essentially orchestrated by that faction against the last Emperor Turian's wishes. Very interesting. It appears, however, that his position is known, and the Centaurum is going to vote to censure his house and deem his family traitors, which apparently requires little in the way of proof these days. So he's asking for House Malari's aid to save his own house, which of course dampens Londo's previously high spirits, because it puts him in a conflicted position. Sheridan arrives on CNC, but almost immediately his vision is again distorted, and he sees the Icarus, his dead wife's ship, explode seemingly in front of the viewport and orders the area scanned. But it's just another hallucination, of course, there's nothing out there. Sheridan makes his excuses and leaves, leaving Ivanova none the wiser. Sheridan has at least gone to MedLab, but Franklin can't see anything wrong with him physically. The dead alien was similarly in good health. Franklin orders Sheridan to just relax and wear a monitor bracelet, believing stress may be playing a part in his recent experiences. Londo challenges Reefer over Urza's treatment, but apparently he is very persona non grata, and the declaration has already been made against him. Londo orders it unmade, but Reefer is clearly not guaranteeing anything. Londo orders Veer to contact all his agents on Centauri Prime, realising that he is out of touch with the machinations of the royal court and needs to get a handle on it. Sheridan is back hitting balls again, but fouling a lot, when Garibaldi comes to see him. The dead Markab trader seems to have been just a trader, but did pass through Sector 14 on his way to the station, the sector where Babylon 4 made its brief reappearance in Babylon Squared in Season 1. Apparently Earth Force has confiscated all the associated records, but believes there's still some sort of anomaly there. Garibaldi, being Garibaldi, has hung on to a copy of the records for his memoirs that he passes to Sheridan, who has been batting for 3 hours straight. Londo and Veer arrived at Urza's banquet, filled with fresh produce from Homeworld. However, things go south rapidly when Urza hears that Londo went to Reefer for help, given that Reefer was the one who brought the resolution against him to the Centaurum in the first place, and his agents say it will pass. Realization dawns that Londo is on the wrong side from Urza's viewpoint, despite his having tried to help. There will be no alliance between Londo and the hero of Garash. Worse still, Urza declares a Morago on Londo, a duel to the death, gifting him the blade he used at Garash that was originally to seal their alliance, but will now be used by Londo in the coming duel. Sheridan is watching Babylon 4's disappearance when he is hit with a wave of pain, and his eyes take on strange pattern effects. Then he sees his parents beckoning to him, and a flash of light that seems to lead to a realization of what he needs to do. Franklin tries to call him on his link, but is left behind on a tabletop. Veer says Londo is made for... Veer says Londo is mad for being prepared to fight Urza, but Londo says they are coro predo. He cannot deny the challenge, and madness is part of the times. Franklin contacts Garibaldi to try and find out where Sheridan is, as he's monitored a neural surge in him. Then Ivanova is told that Delta 1 is prepping for launch. Sheridan tells Ivanova not to worry, and promptly uses a command override to open the Cobra Bay doors and launches Star Fury. Londo returns to the banquet area to begin his duel, where Urza is being readied. Londo tries to give him a chance to change his mind, but he's committed, and Londo notes that while Urza has always bested him with the Qatari blade, his life has never been at stake before. Garibaldi is launched out after Sheridan and settles into formation behind him, not exactly overjoyed at the prospect of heading back to Sector 14. The Morago begins. Nice set dressing for this area. First blood to Ursa, deeply committed. In Sector 14, Sheridan tries to scan the area for anomalies, but ironically tachyon levels are such that his ship can't, and it starts to be buffeted by the local energetic conditions as a portal opens just ahead of it. Suddenly, whatever is in Sheridan bursts out as he screams and starts flowing from him and presumably through the portal. Sheridan blacks out as his fury drifts closer to the portal, and Garibaldi is forced to pursue him and manually grapple his fury before firing reverse thrusters to pull them both out of harm's way. The fight has not gone well for either combatant, but both complement each other on their skills before going for the killing blow. Urza knocks Londo down, but leaves himself wide open, and Londo plunges his blade into his chest. In doing so, Urza dies with honour and extracts a promise from Londo that his family will be protected as if they were Londo's own, which Londo undertakes to do. This was the only way to protect them from Urza's censure. In his quarters, Sheridan explains that the life form must have come from Sector 14 originally and somehow latched onto the Markab. It just wanted to find a way home, and used strong emotional concepts to try and communicate what it needed to him. Franklin is very giddy because it must be so alien that his senses couldn't even read it, gaseous or energy-based. Energy-based seems more likely, of course, given it could exit the Star Fury. However, Sheridan is not so keen on trying to re-establish contact with it. Londo wearily explains to Veer that under the Morago's rules, the victor takes on the loser's family, so Urza's house is now House Malari, and so safe from the Resolution's reach. He knows Urza could have finished him whenever he chose. He sacrificed himself to save his family. For the first time, Londo questions the choices he has made, and Veer seizes on this as an opportunity to make Londo change his path. But Londo says he is committed and must walk the path. Now he just wants to sleep. If he can. Had to just check, but Urza was played by Carmen Argenziano, who played Jacob Carter in Stargate SG-1. The hair was throwing me, but I knew I knew the voice, and I always liked him in Stargate, as I did in this episode. I thought he played it really well for a guest slot. I have to say that I preferred the Centauri plotline over the random alien hitchhiker one here, if only because there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of point to the latter. Just smacked a little of Trek Anomaly of the Week, you know? Interesting though to hear that the Babylon 4 situation had effectively been locked away firmly in the X-Files vault of Earth Force, despite loads of personnel on Babylon 5 knowing about it. Not to mention the confused as hell former staff of Babylon 4 itself, of course. Plus the rift didn't appear to seal itself after the creature went back through, which suggests that traffic through it remains a possibility, so perhaps I should reserve opinion a touch. Now, the Centauri tale is very, very interesting. Here is an old friend of Londo who is diametrically opposed to the faction in the royal court that Londo has fallen into supporting. What this lays out is that there is little veer in Londo after all. He is still prepared to go to bat for his old friend, despite it being Reefer he's up against, as it turns out. It's then fascinating to see how that level of Centauri politics is supplanted by the ritual challenge that Urza manoeuvres Londo into taking on in order to save his family. It's such an old school society in what we would perceive as a more civilised age. It's also interesting that Urza seems to have quite a strong support base, given the nobles present at his banquet. Londo knows damn well that if he tries to back out of the duel, Urza's supporters will be hunting him down. Then there's a painful moment, aside from all physical battling, where Veer sees an opportunity to change Londo's path, to put him on a better one. And Londo knows. He really sees it, holding Urza in his arms as he passes, his old friend giving his life for the honour of his family and fighting for a Centauri empire built on purer ideals. At that point, Londo could have sided with Urza's faction, perhaps acted as a double agent. He reminds Reefer just how much his faction depends on his ability to call in the shadows, in this episode in fact. Yet his desire to see the Centauri go back to the stars clouds his choice so much that he feels he is now committed to the path he has chosen, even if it is the wrong one. He can't see a way out. One thing is apparent though. He sees now, I think, that whilst there may be a new emperor, Reefer himself has gathered a great deal of power to himself, and Londo realises that that's happened without him being aware of it. So now he is having Veer mobilise his intelligence network back home so that he can get the lay of the land and understand the power plays that are happening. Compare this with Season 1 Londo, whose position was seen as having little to recommend it. Fascinating to see how quickly he's adapting to his changed circumstances and begun wading into the inter-house jostling for position that is the Centauri way with a new sense of purpose. I also like the little details we get here of Centauri opulence, the music, the wine, the food. Here's a culture that knows how to enjoy itself and takes pride in doing so. So, what do you think of this episode? Hit or miss? Just 5 episodes to go in this season now, and it's so much more comfortable in its own skin than it was in the first season at this point. Stick with me, and we'll see where it lands. Bye for now.